Welcome to the Real Talk Podcast. My name is Andrea Castinetti. I'm joined today by Siobhan Weber. Today we are talking all things sellers. So when we say sellers market, because we hear that constantly, we want to kind of break it down as far as what it means to you and what it means to sellers and definitely what it means to buyers. So Siobhan, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Normally Siobhan's behind the camera, so nice to see you on here. So when we talk about sellers market, what does that mean to you?
So the way I usually explain this to my buyers is that in any transaction you're on opposing sides, right? Just naturally, because sellers want top dollar and the fewest contingencies. Buyers want the best deal and the most contingencies because that's what protects them. And depending what kind of market you're in kind of dictates how many steps toward the other side you have to take.
Right.
So in a seller's market, such as it is now with low inventory, sellers have the most negotiating power, which means buyers are having to take more and more steps toward the seller, removal or remediation of contingencies, top dollar, competitive financing, things like that. Quick offers, flexible closing dates.
Yeah.
Those are all things that matter quite a bit, which can be tricky for buyers generally, and especially those who are sellers themselves and have, home sale contingencies of their own.
And basically what creates a seller's market is supply and demand. There, even with rates rising, we thought that the market would level out a little bit. Going through COVID, it was the biggest seller's market I've literally ever seen. Again, I've only been in the industry for 7 years, but I've never seen anything like that during COVID. So, I think everyone thought they were going to die. So, they're like, what, we're going to go buy this house for top dollar, but we made it. So, supply, it's minimal. Normally this is quote unquote spring market, and we usually see tons and tons and tons of properties on the market, and they're scarce, and now buyers are saying, well, what if nothing else comes on? Then they all want to jump on whatever property comes on the market, which can be good and bad. Obviously, I'm on mostly the list side, you're on a mix of both, but I think we would all like to see some balance because no one likes to get multiple offers on a property and then have to tell all these people, sorry, you didn't get it. I had one agent reach out to me, she said, this is the 16th offer we've put in and we've lost every one, and their offers were amazing. Right. We had an open house the other night in Shrewsbury. We had 50 people on the first night. 50 on a Wednesday. Yeah. So, it's a lot of people are saying, and they always reach out, I'm thinking of selling. What do I do? How do I do it? What's the first step? So, I think the number one thing is being educated. That's our favorite. So basically with being educated, that means what's your home worth, what to expect, what is the process to sell. And that's why we always like to come in, sit down, talk about the market. We run numbers, where we're at in the market today. We don't look back 6 months because that market was different. No one knows what the future holds, although, we hear all the time, where's the market going to be in 6 months? Listen, if I knew where I was going to be in 6 months, then, it'd be a different story. So I think the most important part when you are thinking of selling your home is to contact a trusted agent. Obviously, our CRG family would love to help you, but whatever agent you decide to use, make sure that they are putting you on a good trajectory to getting your house on the market and teaching you how to get top dollar, because another thing, it's not always the highest number.
Right.
And that's the most important part. Sometimes sellers, if they don't know enough, they're like, I'm going the highest offer, don't care. You have to look at the terms. And that's why, a responsible real estate agent is going to sit down, talk about all the terms and why this offer to them is probably the best. We accepted an offer the other day on a property, and originally their mind is going to the highest. And I had to explain why it's not technically the best offer. So the first step is we do a consultation. We sit down, we come over, we talk about, A, what your home is worth and what the process is. B, sellers always go down that rabbit hole. They start to do one project and then they want to do 50,000 others, and then they get upset when they're not getting, a return on their investment after doing thousands and thousands of dollars. So a good agent is going to sit down with you, talk about the best things to do, to get the biggest return on your investment and things that they may want to consider. This market's a little bit different. Things are working, very quickly. And sometimes you don't have to do 1,000 things. The number one thing is always fresh paint, declutter. Don't ever take it personal if I say declutter. Everybody has clutter. Think of when you're looking at listing pictures. These look like perfectly staged pictures, or look at the ones that they don't declutter. What would you rather have? So, having your property show the best is crucial, because in a fast-moving market, these people come to the property, 20 minutes in and out, and then they need to make an offer. So you want to have, just like when you meet someone, the best first impression. What are your normal first steps when you're walking, or meeting with someone new?
Yeah, so
Better be the same as
do,
mine.
yeah, they are the same. But I do try to also, in addition to what you outlined, walk through the buyer's mentality, right? Because it is a push and pull and a bit of a yin and yang, and so especially with regard to list price, right? So there's a strategy, as we always say, to get you where you want to be on final sale price, but we do not typically recommend listing at what you want to eventually be your sales price.
Right.
And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. With low inventory and a ton of competition on the buyer side, buyers are doing the mental acrobatics already to say, oh, well, this is the list price, so I already know before I even step foot in the door, I'm going to have to pay well over asking and be competitive on my terms to even have a hope, right? Never mind a guarantee. And so when you price on the higher end of what your home is worth, buyers run the risk of saying, oh, and then I have to add on top of that, well, now we're really overpriced. And that is really the main thing we can communicate to sellers in this market, is that almost anything will sell in this market unless it is overpriced, right? Even if it's a teardown, there's a right price for someone to want that lot or want that property or want that potential. But if you overprice it to start, it's sort of an uphill battle for the rest of that life of that transaction. So,
and that's the biggest thing, explaining the strategy. I've lost out on listings when I explain a strategy on, listen, I don't just throw a house on MLS, cross my fingers, hopefully it sells. We sell these properties, but there's a way to get to the number that you want. And a lot of my sellers, they're realistic. They understand that there's a way to get there, and that's why you're hiring a professional, because we know what we're doing. But you will see when a property sits, especially in this market, there's something going on. Or if it's, a normal market, a property will be on the market for a month, 2 months, and that's normal. If a property's on the market now for a month or 2 months, everyone's freaking out. At the open house the other night, the open house started at 4:30. 5 o'clock, an agent came through. How many offers in hand? I said, we just opened 30 minutes ago. She goes, I know, how many offers? It's such a crazy mentality that I'm looking forward to getting back to some balance, and you need to, because, so many people want to purchase a property, and rates are pretty stable right now, luckily. But at the end of the day, we're not going to see rates at,
3% anytime soon.
Right,
no,
2.75,
right.
3, so it's, rates are normal, but I think the most important part is being realistic with what you have to offer, not being quote unquote greedy, because again, once you start to have to do price reductions, I always say it's like blood in the water, agents see a price reduced, and then they're just gonna come in and start lowballing. So,
that's what I would do as a buyer's agent.
Who wouldn't, right?
So, yeah.
We always put ourselves in those shoes too. Like, we've purchased homes before, and obviously a buyer wants to get the best deal. And in this market, if a buyer is going to say, hey, I'm gonna pay X amount over, that is the buyer dictating that. That is not us saying, hey, listen, you have to bid $50,000 over in order to get this property. So, there's a good balance there, but people really need to understand the strategy to get there and what you need to do to get your home ready. So again, decluttering, number one. Let's just put all your stuff away. If you're planning on moving anyways, go to Home Depot, buy those totes, pack it away. You'll probably throw half of it away. I always say get a dumpster. We have plenty of dumpster referrals. Yes. Nothing better than a dumpster.
It feels good to kind of purge it out.
Exactly.
And you're only taking what you really, really care about.
Exactly. And, I think the most important part is letting people get through the doors. Yeah. So we personally at our company, we love open houses because, instead of just sending an agent through saying, hey, here's a listing sheet, go figure it out, we're there to actually sell the property. We're the next best thing to a seller. We know the property through and through, so why wouldn't we be in front of all of these people to sell the house? So don't be, don't shy away from open houses. We hear all the time, oh, it's just the neighbors coming through. Okay, there may be a few nosy neighbors, that's normal, but neighbors have friends.
Right.
Neighbors want their friends to live near them.
Right.
So there's, neighbors talk and people talk. So, for that, don't shy away from open houses.
Yeah, there's no bad press if you're priced right and you are aware of your features and you're promoting them well.
Right.
It all helps to drive traffic, and the more offers, we want to strike a balance between not getting so many offers that you're just heartbreaking and having to make those sad phone calls, but getting enough offers for a seller to feel like they're getting that balance of highest price and most competitive terms, which there's a lesson on any side. We're talking about sellers, but if you know what's good for sellers, then as a buyer in this market, you also know then and therefore how to strategize, right? So if you are flexible on closing terms, then make that known, right? When I'm on the buy side, especially in this market, I know highest price and cleanest terms is what everybody wants, is what they always want, right? But so always make that phone call to kind of say, hey, what's really important, because everyone's motivation is different, and they may have the sellers may have a very specific closing date in mind, right?
Yep.
So the more you can align on those things up front, and as a seller, the more you can communicate those things to us so that we can share it with potential buyers, that is just going to improve the quality of the offers that you get in the end. So over communication is key in any market, but especially
100%.
this one. Yeah.
Right. And one other thing to consider, if you need a place to go, please, for the love of God, put a contingency in there.
Yes.
It is crucial. So many people say, it's all right, I don't want to have any contingencies, I'll figure it out. When your house sells that first weekend, that's when the panic sets in. And then if you don't disclose that there's going to be contingency, that whole thing is going to blow up, and then you're going to be forced to leave your home. So, that was one of the questions. What if I need to buy as well?
Right.
So, the beauty of a seller's market is you're selling high, but you're going to also buy high. So, I think the most important part is either figuring out, can I go rent somewhere temporarily, which is usually the easiest, because buying and selling on the same day is stressful. I mean, let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
And in a very competitive market, when there's multiple offer situations, and you say, well, I have a contingency, I have to sell my home. We're going to show you right now the best way to get your offer accepted if you do have that contingency. At the end of the day, you need to have your home ready with your either on the market, already under agreement before you start looking at properties. Because again, if someone comes to me and says, I want to buy this property, my house will be ready to list in a few weeks. No offense, it's not going to happen.
It won't be competitive with what else is available in the market.
It's not competitive in the least bit. I mean, most closings take 30 to 45 days. If you haven't even listed your house for another 2 or 3 weeks, who knows if it's going to sell, and then that's another month.
Yep.
Or you might get into double contingencies.
Right.
So that's why communication is so crucial. And what we mean by double contingencies is, if I'm selling house A, Siobhan is buying house A, but she has to sell house B, and house B is going to be selling to house C that has to sell their properties. I mean, there's multiple contingencies that everyone has to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So if you have a property to sell, you need to get it ready to sell. My ultimate, because we hear all the time, well, but what if it sells so fast? But that's okay, because you have a contingency, so you're protected.
Right.
Any solid real estate agent is going to protect you wholeheartedly, no matter what, so that you are not kicked out of your property. And that's what you need to understand. A contingency protects you. It's in the offer, it's in the purchase and sale. It is a suitable housing contingency, meaning you need to find suitable housing that you are comfortable with, that you're going to move to in order to sell house A. I hear it all the time. I want to find a house first and then sell. And maybe in a normal market that would work, but unfortunately we're just not in a normal, quote unquote normal market. So, if you have that question as far as, you want to test the waters, for our company here, we don't lock you into a year contract or all those things. We have you sign a contract, obviously, because that's the law. Normally, I'm Italian, normally we do handshakes, but, handshakes, handshakes don't always work in this business. So, we have you sign a contract. If you decide not to sell because, you didn't get the offers you wanted, you don't sell. We never want anyone to feel pressured into selling their home.
Right.
You never want seller's remorse or buyer's remorse. But I think nowadays people are much more informed, and that's just so crucial. And, the first step is just knowing what your home is worth. Some people are just curious, so you can reach out to us all the time and say, hey, can you look at my address? I mean, I get these messages constantly. I'm like, great, this is what I think it would sell for. We always give a range because, again, perfect world, we would say, hey, your house is going to sell for $1 million tomorrow. There's no such thing as a perfect world. So, I think the most important part is knowing what your home is worth and doing the right repairs. If you have a house that needs a complete gut, or and this happens a lot. It's from the 50s and needs a complete overhaul, hasn't been touched in 70 years. There's really no point in doing a bathroom or maybe a kitchen, because you're going to spend a ton of money, and the people are going to come in and probably redo the entire property.
Right.
So that's when you have a property like that you want to just price it to sell. An attractive list price, people are going to see, they're going to do like you say, the mental math, is that what you call it? I've heard it a million times, the mental math, and say, okay, I'm going to put X, Y, Z into this property. So there's no point in doing one room, trying to make it look great. There's ways that we can go around that, but fixer-uppers and investors and flippers, they're everywhere looking for deals. Problem is, you're not really getting deals, in this market. Now, if you have a pretty updated house with maybe 1 or 2 rooms that need to be updated, it may be worth it. Or just some fresh paint or a new vanity, or even tiny things can really make a world of difference.
The tiny things are going to be most likely to generate return. So pound for pound, paint is where it's at. Paint can solve a multitude of things, right? It makes it look like you have brand new cabinets, or as you say, fresh and light and bright.
Right.
I often liken it to repairs before listing, to driving a brand new car off the car lot. Right, you immediately, the second you drive your new car off the lot, it depreciates $10,000. Right. So even if you did a brand new chef's kitchen, high-end renovation, the best case scenario is around 76% return on investment, and that's the best case scenario, right? So you have to figure it realistically, you're looking at getting half of your money back on that spend, and then to your point, what if you're paying for something that they don't even like, and then they're going to rip it out, and then they've overpaid for something they don't even want, right? So it really is about playing to your features, which would be things like lot size, bedrooms, are there finished lower levels or amenities in the area? Every house has a story, and so that matchmaking is another reason you need a professional, right? Because doing this really is a full-time job, and you learn the language and the lingo. So when you're dealing with other agents, when a buyer says, well, we can come significantly over asking, what that might mean. So we can help, explain those trade-offs.
Let me tell you a funny story with that. So a while ago, I was selling a house, and she said, great, I'm going to do fresh paint throughout. I said, great, here's my painter, they're awesome. So the painter called me, she said, can I talk to you for a second? I said, of course. She's like, okay, so I just picked up the paint. I said, okay, because we had the discussion that we are painting for the people, not for what you like. And this woman was eclectic, loved color, loved bright. The colors were
not neutral.
Not neutral, not grays. So I had to make a phone call, and I said, listen, seller ma'am, we are not painting for you. Unfortunately, this is going to be someone else's home. So sometimes you just need to kind of have those come to what moments, and just say, the colors were vibrant, we will say.
It's about marketing at that point, not design choices, really. So at that point, you're trying to make the most number of buyers feel like they're at home there.
And you're not doing this for you anymore. You're doing this to sell a property, and neutrals, depending upon your market. If I'm in Aruba, the yellows and the oranges and the red, awesome, that's what I want. But we're in Shrewsbury. So we're going to, kind of cater to Shrewsbury.
The Central Mass aesthetic is a
exactly,
little bit different.
Right. And if it's a modern home, you want to go as neutral as possible. So, another thing when you are selling, because it's emotional. There's a story to every sale. Someone's downsizing, their kids have all moved out. Someone's having a baby, they need a bigger home. Someone just retired. There's a story for everything. So once we figure out that story, then, we're going to take the emotion out of it, unfortunately. And we're going to say, these are the things you need to do, A, B, C. And that's why you hire an agent. Because a lot of times we also hear, I'm going to sell my own property. I had a client that did that. He was at every open house. No, he did 2 open houses. He was so angry when he heard people saying, I don't like that. And he would fight with everybody. What do you mean you don't like this? And I'm like, oh my God. So thankfully he said, I can't do this. And we explained. It's emotional. When I sold my property, they were doing the home inspection. I came in at the end, and they were talking badly about something, and I was like, wait a minute, I just put my heart and soul into this renovation.
That's my baby, my precious.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, you idiot. I'm the one telling everybody to take the emotion out of it. But when it's your baby, it's a different world. So, that's another reason you need an agent. I remember sitting in my backyard laughing. I'm like, am I a psycho? But I had just renovated like this, like my first kind of flip, and I'm like, this house is awesome. I loved it for 2 years, and then they were like talking crap, and I'm like,
how could you?
Right.
My precious.
So, I mean, it happens to the best of us, and we're in the business, right. And we've, learned to kind of separate emotion from facts and reality. So, I think the most important part is knowing what you're getting into. With us, we always call it testing the waters. You want to see what happens? Great. We're going to get the professional pictures. We're going to do the videos. We're going to do drone. We're going to do everything we need to do to get it ready. Get it on the market. Do some open houses. And, if you don't get the offers you want, you don't get the offers that you want.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think, one other question too. Best time to list.
Well,
yesterday, everybody.
In this market, it's always a good time.
Yeah. So in this, again, we always like to look at where we're at inventory-wise, where we're at in the market. Middle of winter, if it's blizzards, most people aren't, going on a Sunday to just check out open houses for the fun of it. There are serious buyers out in the winter, per se, but they're also looking for deals, especially if a property's vacant. Most people don't want to pay to keep their property up during the winter. Spring market, quote-unquote, usually starts, depending upon the winter, March, beginning of April. And it goes all the way up until usually August. There's a little lull in the middle of summer when people are traveling. But, if it's a family neighborhood, family town, most people want to get their kids enrolled in the school system, and get started. So they're going to want to be in during the summer. So we're expecting, the buyer pool to keep increasing, and hopefully the seller pool is going to, start to increase because, you have one house and, 200 buyers. It's wild.
That's right. Yeah, I think on a state level we need 200,000 units, and we don't have nearly that many.
Yeah. Do we have 200 at this point?
Yeah, that would be nice.
So, to recap, I think the most important part is being informed. So many people say, I looked at Zillow, my house is worth this. And, unfortunately we have to have that conversation as well, saying, okay, Zillow can be a good tool to kind of give you an idea per se. Sometimes it's way off. So hiring a trusted professional to bring actual numbers, actual comps, give you a nice range of what these properties have sold for just in the last 2 months alone. Before we could look back a year or two, but that's out the window. We look back literally with data for about 2 months, depending upon the area. And then we tell you, let's do X, Y, Z. If your house needs a ton of work, then we're probably going to sell it as is, and price it accordingly. If it needs minimal work, then we're going to send our contractors in there and say, hey, let's do A, B, and C, and that's going to be the best bang for your buck. Because instead of going down that rabbit hole of doing one thing or opening a wall and then doing 300 other things, it's overwhelming.
Well, and it has a way of having a domino effect, right? Because if you try to take one project in isolation and now that looks beautiful, well, how shabby does the thing right next to it look? And you just keep pulling at that thread. And now you've renovated the whole house and you're thinking, I got to double my money, right? And how is that going to happen?
Right.
So.
And the good thing is we have an amazing list of contractors that do things so inexpensive. I don't say cheap because it's not cheap. They have amazing quality and they're inexpensive. But
value oriented.
Right. You need floors, you need new rugs, you need paint, especially with kids and animals.
Absolutely.
Your baseboards are usually hacked. I mean, let's call it what it is.
You need cleaners, you need painters.
Exactly. And what we
I have kids, I know.
Exactly. Right. And I have dogs, so I know as well. Another thing we offer is we send our cleaners through right before an open house because nothing is worse than when you're walking into just a dirty home. That doesn't give a great first impression. So no matter what, whenever you work with us, we send our cleaners through right before the open house. Everything is sparkling, windows are shining, floors are gleaming. Again, first impressions, like when you meet somebody. And then one other thing. Okay, so we have stories for days.
For days.
So unfortunately, I had sellers that were very heavy smokers. I don't judge smokers, don't care what you do. However, if you've smoked in your home for many, many years and that has permeated the walls, decades, please stop smoking or go outside.
Just go outside.
But when we
do whatever
paint,
you want, but
and when we vinegar the walls and we do all these things, and you have new rugs and all these things, and your house is smelling like Fabulosa, which is my favorite scent ever. Please do not smoke. Please, right before showings, don't cook this
very
seafood dinner.
Yeah.
I had another client that did that as well. 20 minutes before an open house, he comes in, he starts cooking fish. I said, okay, sir, this probably is not the best time. Could you go to West Boylston Seafood and go eat out? Another one too, rugs. If we replace the rugs, please keep your animals and your kids off of it. You have brand new gorgeous rugs, just shut the door just for, A week. That's it. So, we could go on stories for days of real life experiences, but, it's important. You want the best representation of your home so that when someone walks in, they say, wow, this looks exactly like the pictures. Wow,
Right.
this is better than the pictures.
That's right.
Because it's nothing worse than walking into a property where it looked good for an hour when the photographer was there, and then you walk in, you're like, is this the same place?
Right.
I mean, how many times have we done that?
Right. And buyers don't, even in this market, they don't forgive that easily
Right.
because they know they're going to pay top dollar. And when people pay top dollar, they want what? They want value,
Right.
right? Otherwise, they're going to feel like they've been ripped off. So
Right.
it's important to maintain that integrity all the way through the process.
Right. And keep an open mind as far as, when you get closer to list, what you're going to list for the price. The biggest thing with our company, and I'm okay if I lose a listing because I'm realistic on the price, because we watch them.
Oh, it's happened.
Right? And we watch and we're like, that's just too high. And then it sits and then it's reduced and reduced over and over. And you feel badly because, sellers want top dollar. Of course, real estate is the number one way to build wealth. Of course, our goal is to get you the most we can absolutely get from the property. The more money you make, the more money we make. It's it's a good give and take.
Yeah.
So remember, there's a strategy to get there. We know it. We have proven it. We can show you our track record. We send references out all the time. We are more than happy to do that as well because you want to see what we've sold.
Absolutely.
We're not just going to tell you what you want to hear. We're not those types of agents because it just makes us look bad in the long run. So there's so many pros to selling in a seller's market. You just got to be ready for a quick and wild ride.
Yeah.
But I think being informed is literally the most important part. Knowing what it's worth, knowing the process, and knowing how to get there.
Absolutely. Couldn't
So
agree more.
if you are looking for a free, we call it a market analysis, definitely reach out, never any obligation. More than happy just to give you some education, teach you a little bit more about what you need to know. But reach out anytime, we are more than happy to help. We'll see you next week, guys.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.